Two of my best friends from college are both skilled fishermen. Joe Gatsky during ice fishing season is a walking, talking bait shop. He's got all kinds of lures. He's got all kinds of bait. He's ready to figure out the right combination to catch the fish that he's looking for. Now, my buddy Top Moon Lee, on the other hand, he had a very simple setup whenever he went out for walleye fishing. He had a plain hook and pieces of fresh shrimp. He was ready to go with that, and that worked for him every time. For myself, I've always wanted to try Shad Rap's secret bait, pork rinds, to catch that trophy crappie. If you want to see how that experiment worked out for them, look up Shad Rap, hey, we want some crappie. You'll love that video. Approaches to bait and lures might be very different, but the end goal is all the same: to get the fish to bite the hook, to ignore that sharp piece of metal that's going to hook them and pull them up out of the water. Life is full of baited hooks. Don't let temptation bait you into getting hooked by sin. We're kicking off a new series called Faith That Works. We're going to be going through the book of James, that little book in the New Testament written by James, the half-brother of Jesus. This book is all about encouraging Christians to grow up, to mature, so that when hard times, trials, and temptations come, they are ready to be victors instead of victims. Trials, testing, hard times, they're part of life. We can't escape them no matter what we do. We're always going to run into something that falls into one of those categories. Now, the way that we handle them will determine whether we trust God and grow in our faith and mature in this life, or if ultimately we don't trust God. And so our faith takes a bad turn and we walk away from God's will and we drift into sin. You know, temptations come when we want something good, but we want to try to accomplish that in a bad way. Let me say that again. Temptations come when we want to accomplish something good in a bad way. And when we give in to temptation, we become hooked by sin. You know, we often think about sin as this single act. Oh man, I did a bad thing again. But really, James describes sin as a process. It isn't just a one isolated event. It's a process that happens. Check out James chapter 1, verses 13 through 15. When tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed. Then after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. So let's start off here and just pause for a second and let's get this straight. God does not tempt you. God is never going to try to get you to do something bad that goes against his nature or against his will, what he wants us to do. Temptations can come from the outside, but more often than not, temptations are coming from the inside. And they start with our natural desires, which are not bad things. You know, we get these natural desires like, you know what, I haven't eaten lunch yet. I'm getting hungry. Hunger, good natural desire, because if I don't eat, eventually bad things are going to happen to me and I'll die. I get tired at the end of the day and I need to sleep. Again, good natural desire. If I don't get enough sleep over time, I'm going to get weirder and weirder and weirder until I really just fall apart from exhaustion. However, these natural desires lead us into bad places when temptation enters into the picture. Like I said before, temptation it wants us to do something good in a bad way. And so temptation wants us to do a good thing in a bad way and hide the consequences of that bad way. So we need to look past the bait that temptation is dangling out there in front of us. This school year, there's going to be at some point for you a temptation to cheat in school. Maybe you're going to realize, I'm running out of time to get this assignment done. I got to figure out a way to get this done, so I'm going to cheat. Maybe you're sitting down to take a test and you're looking at that test and going, I have no idea what I'm looking at right now. This could be in a whole nother language and make just as much sense, and I'll probably have just as good of a chance to pass it. So I got to figure out a way to pass this thing, so I'm going to cheat. See, it's that temptation, that desire for a good grade. Again, the desire to do well, to do good work is a good thing. But to go about it in a bad way, that's where sin enters in. Temptation will try to bait you into cheating. And see, there's got to be something about that temptation that grabs our attention, that pulls us that way. I've done a lot of fishing in my life, and I can tell you honestly, I have never caught a fish with no bait. You can throw a hook out there all day long, and unless you catch that especially stupid fish, the odds are you are not going to catch anything with an empty hook. So think about cheating. If you know for sure that if you cheated on a test, on an assignment, or whatever it was, if you knew that there was a 100% chance that you were going to get caught, would you cheat? No, because you can see the consequences of your action. You can see it right there and go, you know what? I'm not going to do it because I know that I will get caught. But temptation isn't just an empty hook out there for us to see the consequences. Temptation puts that bait out there and gets us thinking, oh, I can get that good grade. They're not going to catch me. I'm smarter than them. They won't figure out how I cheated. Or you know what? I'm not going to get caught. No one's going to know. And really, no one's getting hurt. It's just me that gets hurt because I didn't put in the work. It'll be okay. But that's not what James describes here. He describes this process where it builds, and we'll get into that in a second there. We need to, when those times come, when that temptation comes, we need to look past that temptation. We need to look past the bait and see the hook there, see the consequences for our sin, see the consequences of our actions there. So how do we go about looking past the bait, though? How do we look past that temptation and see the consequences of sin so that we pull back and go, I'm not going to go for that? Well, we need to walk by faith to avoid the hook. And we need to walk by faith. And so how do we do that? What does that actually sound like? I mean, that sounds like a great little thing that's on a plaque in your grandma's house, or a cute little statue of some little chubby guy that's walking down a road, walking by faith. Well, see, we walk by faith by looking at life from God's point of view. Cool. Another catchy saying there, Pastor Nate. Awesome. Thanks for helping me out. Well, we find out about God's point of view by getting into the Bible. The Bible is God's point of view on how we are to go through life. And we learn about this by being in the Bible, by reading the Bible, by studying the Bible, by talking with others about what we're reading and studying in the Bible, and then taking what we're reading and studying and talking about in the Bible and doing it in our lives and living that out. Then we begin to see that temptation for what it really is. We see the temptation, but then we also see the hook that temptation is trying to hide. As we grow from learning and reading and studying and talking about what the Bible has to say, learning and seeing life from God's point of view, we will see that temptation. We'll see what it is. We'll understand it. We'll see the hook that it's hiding, and we'll learn to avoid it. More and more, we'll be able to say that we are not going to go that way. And it's very important that we do that because James is very clear in this passage. Sin leads to death. You think to yourself, Pastor, are you telling me if I cheat on this assignment, if I cheat on this test, I'm going to die? Okay, it's not that direct of a path there. So you think to yourself, well, what if I tell a little white lie and no one's going to find out about it? I'm going to drop down dead from that? We think about that with so many different sin areas in our life. I can tell this lie. I can take this thing from my brother. I can do this and no one's going to know. I can look at things online that I know I'm not supposed to look at. I can do some of this because, you know what, these are all natural urges and desires, and those are good things, and that's what the world's telling me. And if I just fulfill those and I'm not hurting anybody else, then that's okay, right? But the problem is that sort of thing builds on itself. A lifetime of cheating you think might only hurt yourself, but ultimately will lead you to a place where you are hurting others in addition to yourself. A lifetime of little white lies builds on itself and grows to where you are no longer a trustworthy person, and you are damaging people around you as well as yourself. It may start out as innocently catching a glimpse of something online that you know you're not supposed to see, but that feeds upon itself, and soon you find yourself addicted to pornography. And you think, you know, I'm not hurting anybody but myself in this. And while it does hurt you, it hurts those around you. It hurts those trapped in that industry. And it hurts future relationships as well. See, small sin doesn't stay small. It grows up. It grows big. As a kid, my mom used to read this story to me out of a series of books called The Jungle Doctor Fables. It was a story about a guy who lived in a village out in the jungle, fictional place, and he found a little leopard, and he brought it back home, a little leopard cub, and everyone's like, oh, look how cute, it's a leopard. But there was an old hunter in the village that said, get rid of that. Baby leopards grow up to be big leopards. And eventually it did, and it attacked and hurt and killed people within the village. Sin is the same way. We think that we can hold on to this little sin because it's harmless, it's not going to hurt anything, but sin grows and leads to death. Friends, don't let temptation bait you into getting hooked by sin. Look past the bait and walk by faith to avoid the hook. This week, your next move is to get into the Bible and ask God to teach you His point of view for life. Establish a regular way to be reading and studying the Bible. Maybe you want to do this in your small group. Get a devotional that you're all going to work on together and stay accountable. Maybe you're going to do this with your family. Sit down with your parents and be like, hey, we need to be reading and studying the Bible together to grow in our faith, to avoid these temptations. Maybe you're going to do this on your own, but I really recommend that you do this with friends, people from church here, from Mission Youth, your leaders, somebody else to help you with that, to talk about it, to grow in that way. And then, you know what? To actually do it, to live it out in that way. Can't wait to see you all on Wednesday night. Have a great week. Bye.